Hello, and welcome to PCI Webinars. Today's webinar, Academic Libraries and Community Non-University Patrons with June Power. June is the Director of Special Collections and Archives for the University of North Carolina at Pembroke, managing special collections such as the Lumbee History Collection and Elmer Hunt Photograph Collection, University Archives, government documents, digitization projects, and copyright management. She is the managing department head and also does genealogical work. She has previously served in access services, managing circulation, course reserves, interlibrary loan, and student employees. June lives in Robeson County, North Carolina, which is still the home of the Lumbee tribe, with her husband, daughter, a clouder of cats, and a new puppy. Coming to you now from North Carolina, it's June Power.
Hello, and thank you all for being here today. I'm going to try really hard not to say a lot, but it's morning and I'm still ingesting coffee, so please forgive me if I do. I'm going to talk today about how we work with our non-university patrons, which we actually have a great deal of at my library. I'm kind of going to go over the context of where I'm coming from, why serving non-university patrons from your community is good for an academic library, some of the services, programming, and fundraising activities that we've done, and how to maintain your priorities, because your priority, of course, is your university community. So trying to find a balance between community and university patrons is very key to a successful program. A little bit about where I'm coming from. We're a state university. We are just now hitting about 7,000 FTE, which is new for us because of NC Promise, which is with 3 schools in the university system. We have $500 semester tuition in state. So that has really raised our FTE up in the past year, and we're looking to increase that by 3,000 in the next couple of years. We started out traditionally as an Indian normal school. So it's kind of like an HBC, but for Native Americans, and we're one of the few in the country. We still live in a predominantly Native American community and have a very high number of Native American students, faculty, and staff. Additionally, we are in a very rural county. It's the largest county in North Carolina. It's incredibly rural with very high poverty levels. Our public library has several branches throughout the county, and they have very limited hours. Some are only open on a part-time basis. And so providing library services to members of our community, we see as part of our mission, because we just don't have the public library access to have in an urban area. There's not options for people really other than us in many cases. If they want to do any kind of research or work after their work hours or on weekends, there is not a public library that is available to provide services to them. So that gives you a little bit of context as to how our university is situated within our local community. And now I really want to find out a little bit about where all of you all are coming from. Can you give me either a green check or a red X if you offer community borrowing services from your academic library? Okay, so I've got X and a check, another X. Okay, so I'm seeing mostly X. Okay, another check. So maybe about 50-50 split here, almost, as to whether we're providing services or not providing services. How many of you, in providing services to those community borrowers, allow those community borrowers to actually come in and check out materials to take home with them? Can you give me a check or an X? Okay, great. So a couple of you are, but most of you are not. And this is kind of going to be more of a discussion answer question, if you can use the discussion board. But let me know, is there any kind of special programming that any of you all do for your community borrowers? An example of something that you might do for them that maybe you're not doing on a regular basis for your regular patrons. You can just type it in the discussion box there if you're doing anything. Or if not, just put a red X up. Okay. Mostly seeing red X's and nobody's typing anything. I'm just saying that for the recording. So that's great. It's good to know where everybody's coming from. So let's talk about why. If you're in a university library, why is the community important? Why are the community borrowers important? Well, increasingly, we're having to see that libraries, and not just libraries, but universities in general, need to demonstrate their value. Libraries have to demonstrate their value to their campuses, and campuses have to demonstrate their values to their communities, to their state. A lot of what's going on in higher education right now is about funding and providing matrices and meeting certain goal points and really documenting that you are providing some sort of added value to what you are doing and documenting that value and demonstrating it to your stakeholders. So that's a big reason. It's also to support community development and economic redevelopment. For instance, as I said, we're in a very rural, poverty-laden area. And so a lot of our community, they need to redevelop themselves for a job market that has changed. They need to be able to look for jobs, work on resumes, do online job training, things that will allow them to progress in their own economic achievement, which then bolsters the county and bolsters the local community. And additionally, because we are a state university, we are taxpayer supported. We're not a private institution. So that means that we have to be open to whoever walks in off the street and wants to use our resources because they are provided by state funds and therefore have to be available to state residents. So anybody that comes in, we need to be able to provide them the same access to resources in the library as we do anybody else. The big difference, I would say, with access for us is obviously our electronic databases, because those are driven by contracts. I'm sure most of you know this. We can't provide off-campus access to those databases, but anybody that comes in the door can use those in the building. But off-campus access, of course, we do have to restrict to our university patrons. Oh, whoops, too far. We provide quite a bit of services to our community patrons. Like I said, because we're trying really hard not to be a default public library, because there is a public library. The public library just has very limited services and hours. We do a lot of connections to our K-12 and community colleges. We have reciprocal borrowing with all the local community colleges, so that people can come in, and we are also starting to implement programs where people are admitted to the community college, and they're also provisionally admitted to our university, and they get a university number, and they're provisionally admitted, so they'll do the first 2 years at the community college and then transfer to our university to do their junior and senior year. And so in building those connections, we have those reciprocal borrowing agreements to allow them to come and utilize the library, just as our normal students do. We also do a lot of work with our K-12 schools. We go out and we do literacy programs in the schools. We bring them here for literacy programs at the library. We also do a summer program called Junior Braves. The Braves is our mascot. And we provide bibliographic instruction on a K-12 level for that program during summer camps. And that has been very, very successful in building those, because we want to stair-step. We want to get people to go through all the steps and be able to get their degree and matriculate at some point at our university. We provide a lot of career assistance, as I mentioned before. We help people with resumes. We help with online job training. We don't necessarily provide the job training, but we provide access to those materials through things like NC Live, which is a host of databases that we have that most libraries in the state have access to. And they have career assistance materials within that database. They have test prep, ASVAB training, all sorts of things like that they're able to get. We do also provide computer access, which is very important in the county. In our particular county, we don't have broadband internet access everywhere. We actually still have people that are on dial-up in our county. So being able to come and use the computers on a fast connection system is really important to people. We do circulate materials to our community patrons. However, it is more limited than our regular patrons. Our university patrons, for instance, have unlimited checkouts. They come in and check out as many things as they want, and there's no limit. With our community borrowers, there is a limit of 5 items, and that can be a mix of items. It can be DVDs and books, or whatever they want to check out, but it's a 5-item limit total. That's really the only difference between circulating materials, other than there are a few items that we do not allow our community borrowers to check out. For instance, course reserves, and we have some equipment such as cameras, laptops, iPads that are limited only to our students, because that was the purpose of those collections, was to facilitate certain assignments, and those are very high demand items that we just can't let our community borrowers check out. We've had very great success in circulating materials to our community borrowers. Our loss rate has been negligible. We do not have daily fines. We bill patrons for lost materials after the overdue notice. They'll receive a replacement bill. And that really does a good job of getting materials back in the door. So we don't really have a problem. We do limit circulating materials to patrons over 18. They do have to be over 18 to check out materials. That's the only other real limit. We also do some very limited interlibrary loan. We do not interlibrary loan for our public patron popular materials, but there are certain research materials that the public library is unable to get in the same way that we can. And we do have a few community members that are very research driven in what their work is doing. We have a couple local historians and such like that come in and need to get some more academic research materials that we do help them with. So it's kind of a judgment call when we're getting those requests and when we approve their permissions to do interlibrary loan. We also have a lot of members of the public that come here for printing and copying. I believe that we are the only place in the county that they can print or copy in color. There is not another place unless they have their own printer at home. We do charge for that. They have a card. We have a print system called WEPA. They just set up an online account, add money from their debit account, and they're able to print and copy, and they can scan to email also if they choose. So that's been a very, very popular service. Though with the elimination of the ability to use cash, we have seen a big decrease in that. Our campus IT was very integral in changing that. They're the ones that kind of control our print system. And our public patrons, that was the big outcry, was they wanted to be able to use cash, because sometimes some of them come in and all they have is $1 in quarters and they can't put money on an account online. So that was kind of a hurdle we had to go through. But we've also been working very closely with the public library to make printing easier there as well. So we do partner with the public library on some things to try to make sure that we're not kind of taking over their role, but partnering with them to provide parallel services. And I already mentioned earlier, in-library versus off-campus access of materials. NC Live is really the only thing that's available off-campus for our public patrons. And to access NC Live off-campus, they have to use a public library login. So that is one of those other connections that we have. They may come here because we're open at 10 o'clock at night when they're able to do their work, and the public library isn't, but they still have to have that public library access code. So we do have to work very closely with the public library. Based on what you're seeing here and what I've mentioned, are there any other suggestions that you all might have for services that you've been thinking of for your public patrons? You can put those in the chat. Or you can give me a red X if you don't have any. GED pressed and test taking, that's a very good one. We do provide that in our NC Live database. I mentioned it had ASVAB. It also has GED, SAT, MCAT, like all those very different, various scholastic and career test kind of things. So that's a very good suggestion. We do get a lot of people that come in for those sorts of testing. We also provide some books that kind of go along with those tests, and unfortunately those are reserved books, so I'm really glad we have the database that allows them to do some things if they can't check out those reserved books. We are a curated law collection but allow public patrons to do research. That's great. Legal research is something that comes up a lot. We have LexisNexis, which is where all our legal stuff is, so we don't have we're not a law library. We don't have a bunch. But legal questions come up a lot, and I'm sure the law librarians know. You know, we always tell people, I can't give you legal advice, but I can show you where you can look stuff up. But we get a lot of legal and a lot of business. We actually have someone else that comes in here, and she meets people and helps them do their taxes when she's here. She kind of uses this as an office space for herself to do her tax business, which is fine because we get people in the door. They're happy to come here. We're happy to have them. All right, great. In addition to our services, we do a lot of programming. Our programming is really the big part of our Friends of the Library program. Friends of the Library is what we call our community borrowers. We have a board that runs our Friends of the Library program, and most of our library programs are hosted or co-hosted and co-funded by our Friends of the Library. And I neglected to mention this. I should have mentioned this in the first slide. We do charge a $10 membership if people want to check things out of the library. It's $10 for a year. We do have a few people that are lifetime members that they paid the $1,000 to do the lifetime membership. And they, of course, have privileges forever. But $10 around here, people really appreciate being able to access our resources and check things out. And we have found that that fee for us is reasonable. In some places, I've seen much higher fees, but their situation is a little bit more different than ours. Like I said, we're in a very poverty-ridden county, so $10 works for us. Our programming, though, is free and open to anybody that wants to come in. We announce things on our social media, through campus, and of course we use the local newspaper and outside venues as well to kind of get that news out to the community when we're holding programs. Social media is probably our best for reaching the community right now for these programs, as well as the local newspaper. We always put announcements in there. Our cultural events are very wide-spanning. A lot of them are Native American related. We do a Native American regalia event every year. We also do readings for African American History Month and Native American History Month, where we do poetry and prose readings from those cultures. We just had a library con, which was kind of like an anime Comic-Con kind of sort of thing that we hosted, and it was great. We paired with our campus anime group and invited members of the public and artists and had a big thing. It was a lot of fun. It was all out on the bottom floor of the library and out on our porch and around the little pond that's out in front of the library. and it was really well attended. It was really great. We do author events, which is usually with our faculty. When our faculty publish, we usually invite them to have a speaker event, and we host that, and invite members of the public in the campus community to come and ask questions and talk and discuss. We also have had local authors. So that's one of those ties with the community where we can pull in local authors that maybe don't have a tie to campus, but their published work has relevance to our community and to our patrons. Every year we also host an annual poetry and prose contest, and we give out cash awards for that. We have 3 categories of our university patrons, our university students, high school. We have a high school category, and we allow local high school students to participate. And then we have members just of the general community in general that are not either university or high school students. And then after the contest is over, we have all the winners gathered together, and we have a poetry reading, and everybody reads their winning poems, and it's really great. We always have first, second, and third place are invited to come and share their poems with everybody. We have a big event, usually for National Library Week. We usually have a benefit. That's when we have our annual benefit. That's our big, huge fundraiser, which I'll get to. And we host other programs. We have our annual Friends of the Library meeting, which is during that week. And that's when we kind of switch over our change from, whoever's the current chair to whoever's going to be the chair next year, sort of thing. And we also hand out our scholarships, which I'll mention when we get to fundraising at that program. We do topical seminars as things come up. For example, it was mentioned I do genealogy. We have other librarians that do other topics that are of interest to them on various things, cooking. The anime club actually was started because we had a librarian a long time ago that was really into manga, and she started the campus anime club, and that was started from one of these topical seminars. And when we do our seminars, we invite people from the public to come, so that it's not just a campus environment. We want to get as many people as we can to come and participate, because it makes the discussions and the programming so much better when we have a mix there. And again, I'm going to see if anybody has any suggestions for other programming that you may have done or heard about. You can write it in the discussion board or give me a red X. I'm trying to think of some other topical seminars we've done. Genealogy has been very popular. We do a lot on Native American history and the Lumbee Indian tribe. That's our local tribe. That's a big, we usually have a series of programs that span the whole month of November that covers Native American history in various aspects. Antonia's done anime clubs with public patrons and hopes to do some more in the future. Yeah, anime is really big right now. Some other programming where we try to tie in with popular TV shows. We did a escape room up here in the library. We did a Harry Potter themed event. We had a huge Halloween blowout with a DJ. And so that was a lot of fun. So we've tried to kind of do various different things, and we try to change it up every year. For a long time, and I would caution against this, I felt that we were doing the same exact programs at the same exact time every year. And while it was easy because you kind of had those canned programs ready to roll back out, it gets stayed and it gets a little boring and people get bored and your attendance starts to drop off. So there are those signature programs, like our Native American Regalia program is signature for us. We have that every year, and we're going to continue to have it. And this year, I think we're actually going to have to move it because we actually ran out of room in the library for it this year. We had standing room only and ran out of chairs. So I think next year we're going to have to actually have it outside the library at another campus venue that's a little bit bigger, which is a great problem to have. Some of our other programs, though, that are not necessarily our staple like that, you can kind of mix those up. Maybe you do them every couple of years because you want to keep things fresh. You don't want things to get staid and boring. Oh, a local D&D club someone is running. That is a great idea. Wonderful idea. Local D&D club. We've actually also had requests for just a game board night, and so that's something that we're thinking about next year. We'll do some sort of a game, a board game kind of night, where everybody can kind of come and play board games. We've also talked about having a trivia night. So we'll kind of see what kind of goes on with the holidays next year. We like to try to have one program a month, just to kind of keep everybody involved in the library. Those are great suggestions. So I've mentioned our friends of the library and how that's kind of who runs our community patrons. They maintain our membership list. Our circulation desk are the people that actually take the money from the membership usually and set up their circulating account and give them a library card. We actually had cards created so that our university patrons use, of course, their university ID. Our friends of the library patrons use a specially created card that we ordered. We had them made with barcodes. And when people come in and purchase a Friends of the Library membership, we issue them a card. So it's a great benefit for them. They get to check materials out, and they get to use the library, and they're supporting the library. Our Friends of the Library, they put out a newsletter a few times a year. They maintain the membership list. They make sure everybody is aware of what programming is coming up. They're really a well-run FOL board. Every year we have an annual benefit. We've done different things. We've had raffles. We've had silent auctions. We've had just speakers that came, and we sold tickets to programs. All the money that we raise during our benefit and through any other fundraising we do throughout the year goes to benefit our scholarship program. We give out about 9 or 10 different scholarships for academic purposes every year. Some of them are book scholarships, and some of them are just regular scholarships. So throughout the year, we do whatever we can to fundraise wherever we can. There are several times throughout the year, like for instance, we'll go out and we'll sell snow cones at various university events. And Friends of the Library members go and do those sales in order to raise some money. We've done, we just did, there's a picture here, a flat screen TV raffle. That was really big. We raised a lot of money with that particular raffle. So are there any other suggestions? You can give me a red X or type your suggestions in the discussion box of any other kind of fundraising you might have done. We've sold books. We've had cooking demonstrations. We have speakers from the community that come in and volunteer their time for these events a lot of time. We have different varying levels of membership so people can decide. We do actually have a student and faculty membership as well. And their benefit is we have a limit on the number of DVDs and media people can check out. And if a student or a faculty member wants to join the Friends of the Library, they get to check out a little bit more than everybody else, because we wanted to make sure that they got a benefit out of their membership instead of just, you know, their generosity is nice and we appreciate it, but I wanted to make sure that they got something back out of it. One of our really fun events, you can see in the picture, we had a showing when Harper Lee's new book came out. We had one of our English professors do a discussion of the new book, and then we showed the original To Kill a Mockingbird movie, and that fundraiser did really, really well. People really love To Kill a Mockingbird. And you can see in the other picture there, that's one of our librarians and one of our Friends of the Library members with one of our scholarship winners from this year. So our scholarships are $1,500, $1,000, and $500. And like I said, we give about 9 of those out every single year. And we have got a really good group of people that review all those scholarships. There's a lot that goes into doing that whole scholarship process, but it's really well worth it, and our students really appreciate it. And I'm very happy to say that the past 3 years, some of our student workers at the library have won a couple of those scholarships, which has been very nice, because it's good to see the students that you know get those scholarships, and it's good to see them interacting with members of the community. Those students end up working with the Friends of the Library Board and our community members, and it's a wonderful partnership that we have with our community. Does anybody have any suggestions on any other fundraising? Okay. The last little bit I really want to talk about is maintaining your priorities. Academic versus public libraries. We are different beasts. We are not trying to be a public library in providing services to our community members. There are some institutions that do have kind of combined services where they are an academic and a public library. We like to think of ourselves as more of the augmented services category. We don't want to take the place of the public library, but we want to make available to their patrons services that may not be offered at their locations. We want to be a partner and not a replacement. This has led to a little bit of friction at times over the years, and at times we've kind of needed to scale back what our Friends of the Library was doing, because we felt that sometimes that maybe there was a little bit of overstepping, and we don't want to do that. You have to have very, very clear policies and procedures to define those relationships, to define the relationship between the Friends of the Library and your library's public services versus the public library's public services, so that nobody's overreaching or overstepping or going beyond what their mission statement is and what their agenda is. It can be a very slippery slope, and it's something you just have to constantly be aware of and be looking for. Prioritizing the mission is important. Our students come first. Our faculty come first. It's not that we don't want to help our public patrons sometimes, but our students have to come first. And a clear example of this is our study rooms. We are very small. Our library was actually built for when we had less than 2,000 students on this campus. So we are in desperate need of a new building. Until we can get that new building, however, we have a very limited number of study rooms. Right now we're in our summer break. If members of the public want to come in and use our study rooms, chances are it's not going to be a problem at all. Our study rooms are open. They're first come, first serve. They're welcome to use them. During the school year, however, they're almost always occupied by students. And if they were to be occupied by members of the public and students needed them, we would ask the public to please relocate to somewhere else in the library, because our students have the priority. And some of our public patrons do tend to get upset sometimes when we prioritize students. And we just try to simply explain to them that we are an academic library. Our students have to come first, but we are more than happy to help them in any way that we can. We try very hard to let them know, hey, we're here, we want to help you, we want you to come here, we want you to use our facility and our resources, but we have to remember our mission, and we need you to remember our mission as well. And I think that most times they do understand that. Sometimes we just have to explain it to them, and sometimes there are people we have to explain it to a couple of times, but that's okay, we don't mind. Intellectual freedom issues and handling children kind of go together. Another thing we don't do that some public libraries do is we don't review books for censorship purposes. We don't have that process where somebody submits a complaint about a book and then it goes through this review and then they decide if they need to keep it or how they need to justify keeping it. We're an academic library. There's going to be stuff in our library, on our shelves, and in our databases that's not child appropriate maybe. But we're not in a babysitting business. We are not in a parental and local parentis situation here. We do have a notice that you need to be 18 to use our computers. We do let people know this is an academic library, we don't censor. Because we have had some parents that have come up and asked us to get rid of materials that they felt were inappropriate for children. And we just tell them, sorry, we don't do that. It's in our policies. It's well documented. And luckily, our administration's always backed us up on that. We've never had a problem. And it's only actually come up a couple of times. We also have had a couple of times of people letting their children kind of come in and run wild. Our policy is if you are 12 or under, you need to be with a grown-up. We're not here to babysit. And so we just kindly ask them to keep their children with them. If it's a problem, we can ask them to leave. We can, in the very rare instance, call campus police if we needed to. I think we've only had to do that once in my 16 years here. And that was for a stalker patron, which was a totally different situation. So these intellectual freedom and children issues, they will come up, but you just have to explain and make sure that you have something in writing to back you up that explains how an academic library is different from a public library with, say, a children's section. We're not getting those internet funds where we have to regulate our internet. We did have a problem one summer with some local teenage boys coming in to the computer lab and doing some naughty things. But we handled it in kind of a funny manner. We just kind of embarrassed them a little bit, and then they stopped doing that at our computers. But we don't forbid anything. We don't have limits on anything. We don't have filters on our computers. People can come in and do really whatever they want on the computers, and it's not our job to censor them. That's not what an academic library's purpose is. And getting some members of our public to understand that sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge. We're in a very conservative area. So we do have some people that want to make that an issue. But if you have very clear policies in place and very clear procedures in place, and your administration is behind you, that will not be a problem. It's not been a problem for us. And we've only had maybe a handful of those kind of things come up over the past 20 years. And I literally can count on less than one hand the number of times that's been an issue. And mostly it had to do with movies. But we just tell them we don't censor. I put a few things here for some additional reading after the presentation. Academic Library Outreach Beyond the Campus Walls by Nancy Courtney. Libraries as Community Partners by Carol Smallwood. Outreach, How and Who, Academic Libraries and Their Involvement in the Community by Tina Schneider. And Community Users and North American Academic Libraries by Wanda Dole. There's some great reads to kind of look a little further into these issues that I've brought up. Are there any questions about what I've talked about today or anything I could answer about working with community patrons that you may have a question about? And Kristen noted that their students get first priority as well, which as it should be. Do you allow community users Wi-Fi access? We do at our library. It's controlled by our campus IT, as is all our community and printing resources. They have a way that guest patrons, we have our regular Wi-Fi, and then we have a guest Wi-Fi. And they sign up for the guest Wi-Fi with their phone number, and then they get texted an access code, and it's good for 24 hours. The only problem is we haven't, I don't think, set up how to print from the guest Wi-Fi to our printers yet. So then that gets to be kind of a thing. They have to save to a flash drive that they can then take over to our printers and print from a flash drive. So I wish printing was a little easier, because that's mainly what people want to come in and do, is come in and print things. But that's a great question. We do not have Wi-Fi printing, and it stinks. I agree, Kristen. I agree. I wish we could. Even our students, we don't have Wi-Fi printing for our students yet. I don't think it's been a whole thing, but our IT department's supposedly working on it. Tonya says they have the college and public library together. So there's no, a lot of places are doing that now, especially in areas like ours is, where there's not a large public library nearby with a ton of branches to it. I grew up in a very urban area. My father was military, so I lived in ginormous cities. And it kind of blew my mind when I moved here and realized the public library closed it before I got out of work. So I'm really glad that we're able to help people out, because I know we have patrons that are working parents and just can't get to our public library before they close because they have a job. Do you have picnic tables outside where patrons can use Wi-Fi after hours? We do. We have a little patio out front. There's even an outside outlet if they needed to plug in their laptop for some reason. And so there's a few picnic tables out front. We'd like to have more in the future, but I think we have about 4 or 5 out there right now. And they do use those after we close. It's funny, on Sundays, especially it's mostly our students that are here those kind of late night hours. But we'll close the library in the evening on the weekends, and they just move out to the porch, which is fun. We're also right across the street from a McDonald's, which of course is 24 hours and has 24-hour Wi-Fi. So sometimes people just move over to the McDonald's when we close.
That's kind of fun.
Yes. And we just added a cafe in here this year. We had a major renovation. We added a cafe. We added some stationary bikes, movable whiteboards, some really cool funky furniture. And both our students and our community patrons have really been in here a lot more. We've seen a lot of our numbers go up. So I've been telling them they needed to have coffee in here for years. All right. Any other questions? I'm happy to answer anything.
This was really interesting. You don't think about how those two interact. And as you say, in larger communities, they don't need to sometimes because the public library might serve all their needs.
Right, right. Oh, thank you, Megan. Thank you for. Yeah, I'm so glad to share what we've done here. But yeah, it is very different. Before I moved here, I was in Virginia Beach, which was so it was like a little bit of culture shock. But there's also a cultural ownership of our library here that I didn't touch on as much because it's very specific to here. Because we were an Indian normal school founded by the Lumbee tribe, and we are still in the heart of the Lumbee tribe, our community patrons feel a lot of ownership over our campus and our library. Our special collections, especially, which I'm heading now, is very, very important to our community patrons. That's probably what they come to use the most, other than the computing resources. They want to come and see the old yearbooks. They want to see our Elmer Hunt collection. We had a photographer, and he was a community photographer for years and decades. And he also did some campus photography. But he passed away and left us 60,000 photo negatives that we have digitized and put online. And then we had all these really cool hosting parties where we had the pictures printed and had the people numbered, and people would come in and say, oh, well, that's my Aunt Jenny, and that's this person. And they helped us get all the people identified. And we could not have done that without the community at all. So there's those unique opportunities that are going to be specific to your instance, your university.
That's a great partnership. That's really cool.
That you need to look for and find those little niche kind of programs.
I have a question for you that's a little off point, but I think you'll be able to address it.
Sure.
How are you going to grow that big? You said you're going to add. You think that you're going to add another 3,000.
Yes, and that is due to NC Promise. NC Promise was passed by our state legislature. We are one of 17 schools in the UNC system, and 3 border schools, ourselves, Elizabeth City State, and Western Carolina. We now have $500 a month tuition, $500 a semester tuition, and $2,500 a semester for out-of-state. So we saw a jump of like 1,500 FTE in a year. And they're predicting, we've already raised that prediction for the next couple of years. Our admissions and our applications have already increased again. So it's that tuition break that we got from the legislature. The legislature's covering the rest of the tuition.
Wow, that's going to be amazing.
It is phenomenal. I don't know of any other deal like it anywhere. I wish I'd had something like that when I was in college, and maybe I wouldn't have student loan debt until I die. So.
All right, I don't see any other questions coming through, so I just want to thank June for a great presentation. Thank you for sharing all those ideas and the way you're doing things. I think it's terrific. And I want to thank you all for attending. And we hope to see you again soon at another PCI webinar. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you all so much. And if anybody has any follow-up questions, feel free to email me. I'm happy to answer them.
Terrific.